Today, newbies and gurus, let's get started with using provider with your API calls or probably JSON calls. So this is pretty much very easy. So just the way you normally call your API or JSON calls, but this you're gonna implement it using provider. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm gonna actually show you this link, and this is what we'll be using for today. So this is basically a JSON file which has been set like an API. So basically the same as a RESTful API. So here, what we're gonna do here is to actually use this JSON data inside our project, but we're gonna apply provider. So let's get started. So inside our Flutter project, we need to look at adding first the provider itself before we can actually use it. And we're gonna use HTTP. So you need to make sure you also include HTTP in your project because we're gonna use this API to actually add this to our project. So make sure you get these two dependencies. All right, let's get started. So inside the main, we need to first do the necessary stuff, that is importing the package. So if I'm importing Flutter material.dat, then what we'll do is we need to get our entry function, which is the void main, which is really necessary. So you don't really need this, but it doesn't matter. You can leave it like that, or it can be empty. Not really important. So next is we're gonna call our run app, and inside our run app we're gonna have our first class, which is my app. My app, check the naming convention, but it does not really matter. So let's watch here. This is what my app. So what we're gonna do here is to actually create a class which have this my app. So let's create a stateless widget. So stl for short, sorry. I want to use the shortcut that's using stl, and here is my my app. Okay, my app. And after my app, what you have to do is to let's simply return a material app here. So material app, and inside the material app we'll be having a title. So title, and we'll call this let's call this API JSON with provider. This will not show in the app. It's only the title to see in there. So make sure you actually put this in double quote or single quote, and that will be okay. I want to take the banner out of the user interface, so I use the debug check banner, and then I set this to false. Okay. And next is to add our home to this, but what we have to know is our home have to actually use the provider so that we can call other files and notify other pages using the provider. So our home will make use of provider. To make use of that, we need to call change notifier, but this time around we use the change notifier provider. Then we have the create, and for the create we're gonna do that very soon. Okay, but before we continue, let me create a folder in here. One folder will be called pages, or just one page, so I call it a page, but you can name it pages or whatever. Then it depends on you. Next, since the API is about a video, but will not necessarily be calling a video in here, so I'll call the first file video.dat, whatever name you want to give is okay. And then I'll create another folder. I'm just trying to organize my files. So, and I'm gonna call this model. So if you are using an API, you need to have a model, but this is gonna implement, this is gonna be implemented using the provider. So let me call it model. Yeah, just a naming convention for you to know. Model provider. Yeah, let me do it that way. Sometimes you can even do service or whatever. Oh, okay, good. So model provider, and let me create a file in here, and this file I'm gonna call it the video underscore, let me call it data, video underscore data, and this will be dot stat extension. Okay, perfect. So which one would we use first? Video. Yes, we'll use the video. So in the video, what I would do is to simply add a class in here, which it will be important. So I'll add a class, and let me first class. Okay, let me add a class to this, and this class will be, I'll call this class video data. Video data. Yes, and this will be with what? Change notifier. So very important. If you are using a provider, you need to make sure you use this. Okay, and you see it actually automatically imported what? Uh, sorry. So with what? Change notifier. Oh, what's going on? Change notifier provider here. Then it will automatically import the provider for you. And I have this one here. No, it's curly brackets. Okay, so we have, oh, no. We need to call change notifier. The provider will be at the other side. Yeah, change notifier. Good. So change notifier also imports the what? The foundation for you. So foundation is actually okay for this. And we'll be using HTTP here. So we can actually include the HTTP package by calling HTTP here. HTTP. Okay, and then I'll call HTTP dot here too, so that it will not yell at us when we start using the HTTP. So here, what I'll do with the create is to actually add a class I just created in the video. So first, I'm gonna call sorry, I'm gonna call the create. The create should have two round brackets, and inside this we'll call the context first. So context. Okay, and from context I need to actually use a fat arrow, not fat arrow, and with after the fat arrow you need to actually add the class of the file at which you want to actually use the provider on. So data, I'm gonna call data video data. So let me go back to this. Oh, I call this, oh, all is small letters, so I don't need to use a cap here, so I use a small letter. Yeah, good. So that is where I actually got it. And second is to return a page we are yet to create. Let me see, but this page, video data should go here, should go to this file. So I cut everything here and then I move it to this file since we've already named it video data. And inside the video, we need to actually add a class in here, and this will be a stateless widget in here. So I call STL, and oh no, STL. Okay, and here I'm gonna name the class video page. Video page. Okay. And there is no what import of what material that up there, so it's yelling at us, so I import that. All right, so let me go back to the home, and at the home I need to have our home page or the video page being shown here. Good. So after this, I need to call builder, which is not really necessary. You can easily just return, you can just return the page, but it's just recommended. So I use the builder, and the builder context child, and inside here I return the what? The video page. And then I need to terminate this. Why is this? Okay, let me see. We have the video, we have the provider, and then we need to have the video data also here. So let me import this, the video data here, and we should be fine. Correct. So let me go to the video data. That will be very important for our project. So let me finish that before the video will be the user interface. Okay. So now we have our HTTP and foundation up there. So what we're going to do, since we want to call API, we want to use the map. We use the map to actually call the API. So for map, we first need to have our string here, and the string will be for probably to map our keys, and then we have dynamic. We can use string here, but it's gonna yell at us, so we use dynamic for our what? Our value. Dynamic. Okay, good. Dynamic, and for our dynamic, we're gonna have a private variable called map, and that private variable will be what? Equal to empty. Good. Now another variable we need is a bool, and this bool will check for our errors when we are calling the what? The API or the link, and default should be false. Yeah, we're gonna use it later, so we are setting it to false at the beginning. And we will have another variable string with underscore, which is private to this class, so error message, and this error message will also be used later on. So I set this to empty here, and then I terminate this. Okay, so now we get our variable set. What we have to consider next is to look at calling the actual link of what? Of our API or JSON. So I'll use the feature here, feature, and for feature we need to have a type, and it's gonna be void. Okay, and then what we do is to get what are we going to use here? Get fetch data. Let's use fetch. Get fetch data. Yeah, and then we're gonna get data. So I use the fetch data here, and with this, let's append the asynchronous with this, so that we use the async wait to fetch our data. So inside the feature, first we need to actually append our URL to our response variable. So let me set that to final, and then I this variable response. Okay, and then response will be equal to get, but before this get, I need to call await here. Okay, perfect. So what we'll do is to add a URL here, and we can store the URL either in a variable and then call it here. So probably I could do this, but we can also leave it. Probably I can set this to be a variable like this here, and call final, add final for it, and then I'll set this to the URL we want to use for API. So URL, and then let me use URL dot parse. Yes, dot parse. And we need to pass in the URL here. So the URL I showed you earlier on, and then this one is this URL. Yeah, that's what we're gonna use for the project. Okay, and I paste it in here, but we need to make sure we have this in the what quote. Perfect. And let me see. Good. So we have, let me relook at this. So this is here, perfect. And then we have a feature. And for the future, let me see. So here, final response is go to await, and then get the what? Get the URL. So we get the URL. I need to terminate this well. Okay, so we simply stored the what? The URL of our API or the JSON inside this variable, and I just added the variable here inside our get. So respond await, then get this link. All right, so next let's do a simple check on this to know if we've actually gotten the data in this link. So what we have to do is to use the if statement, and we will say if, then the condition here. What will be the condition? We say if respond dot, let's say respond dot status code, dot status code, and if response dot status code is equal to 200. 200 means it actually brought a good response, so we use response. We have a lot of status code, but I guess this is easy, everybody knows. So we have a 200, and next inside if we need to check our try. If it's equal to status code, then let's use the try catch. So try. Okay, so for our try, what we have to do is to check our private variable, which is the map, and the map should be equal to JSON what? JSON decode, and this JSON decode should be equal to the source. And what is the source? The source is the response, which holds the URL, and then it should be appended to the body. Okay, good. Then we can terminate this here. So we have the try and then catch. If there is something wrong, you need to catch it in the error. So we use E for error. And then let's see. Inside our catch, we need to make sure the error is equal to true before it catches it. Okay, so true. Good. Next is we need to also make sure in our catch the error message should be converted to string. So our error dot to string, convert the error to string. Perfect. Good. So we are actually doing well here because we have called our what? Our URL here, and then we have used the if statement to check whether we actually have data coming in our app or not. So apart from checking and then converting it into a JSON decode and appending it to the body, you need to also print the error to the user. It should be very meaningful, so we add dot to string. Okay, so after we do that, we need to have our getter. Our getters will help us to get the variables we have used in here in the different what the different files. These are private, so we need to have global variables to actually be accessible in other files. So what we have to do is to use what we call the get or the getter. So we're gonna set a getter. So after, but let's not forget, since we are using a provider, we need to make sure our provider is able to listen to what is happening inside this file. So to do that, just a minute. After this, I need to add an else to this. The catch. After the catch, I'm gonna add an else to this one. So let me see. Okay, so else do something, because we need to add this to actually give other meaningful what message to the user. So error, else error, if error is equal to true, we are double checking. If error is equal to true, then underscore error message should be equal to what? Let's say probably we'll say error message, and we need to print out this to the user. So error message, I'll say maybe if all this above fails, maybe your internet is bad. Your internet is bad. Okay, perfect. So then we need to call the whole map, and the map should be what? Empty on displaying. That means the map is empty, so it's gonna display this error. Perfect. So this is also good to double check with our error message. So here, if we do the try and the try actually gets the JSON decoded body, then this will not be an error, so it will just work fine. But if there's an error, then if there's an error or error is equal to true, then we'll get the error being converted into a string, or else if there's a error in both this not showing well, then this will actually print to the user, yes, if the whole map is empty. Okay, so this will be very meaningful to the user. That is why I added the else. Okay, so next what we have to do is to look at adding the notifier to this so that it can be notified on other pages. Since we are already using the change notifier, we need to add notify listener. So after our map here, we'll add the notifier listener, which is very important for the provider. So anything that happens in this file can be notified to other pages because we are using the change notifier here. Good. Next is to have our getters. So let me add our getters here. So first I'll call map, and then this means it will be accessible in different pages. So this is actually private now to this page only, so the getters will help us access it outside through the provider. Yeah, but without providers, this is also important. If you are not even using a provider, you need to set your getters so that it can be accessed outside. Okay, so we are actually getting the map through our our private variable map here. And this map, okay, after getting this one, we need to also get our bool. So we say bool, and bool we need to get using this variable arrow, and this arrow be getting from our private arrow inside this. Okay, arrow, perfect. Next is to get our error message. So we use a string for this. String. Okay, and we are going to get our underscore. No, this will be the variable to get the error message. So no underscore. So I call error message, and then appended to underscore error error message. Message. Okay, why do we think it's yelling at us? Because this should be inside our code. Perfect. So next, what I'm going to do is to have a simple function here, which we're gonna add to our home page here later. It's gonna be a simple we're gonna add a floating action button where it's gonna have a function of a refresh for the whole page. So first I need to add a simple function here, which you might not understand, but in the user interface I'll refer back to this, and then you're gonna get the full meaning. So here I'm creating a class void, and this class I'm gonna call it refresh, or I'm gonna call it empty page. This one will be much more sensible. Empty the page. Yes, yeah, empty the page class. Okay, then this will be very simple. What I'll do is to first have this arrow, which is our private arrow, and we'll have this error message also there, and then I'm gonna have the map private map variable in here, and what I'll need here is also notify our provider. So here what we'll do is, since it's going to be a refresh, we want to always set this error to false. So because we're gonna call this separately in one of our on press function. So false. Okay, and then next here we're gonna set this to what? To an empty empty quote, means nothing. and the map will also be empty parameters, means nothing. So we're done. So when we call this function, what it's going to do is to actually set our entire page back to 0, means nothing will show, and I need to pull the new data. Okay, perfect. So we are done with this one. So why did we add this extra else? Extra else means when there's an error, print this meaningful data to the user. So this will check and then print meaningful data to the user. Okay, next is to check our video. So what we'll do is to first create a simple interface to help us display what we have in our data there. So I will have the material.app, which is normal, and then let me first begin with a scaffold here. Scaffold, we are designing our UI, so we want to use a scaffold, and inside the scaffold we're going to have an app bar and then app bar. Okay, app bar here. Okay, and for our app bar we only need something simple here, not complicated. So our title, and then we use the test widget. The test widget will simply be probably, let's say, video API / provider. Good. Next, what we'll do is to call our body, and what will be in the body is a simple UI, but we want to add drag to refresh. So we use what we call the refresh widget, and we call the refresh indicator. Yes, the refresh indicator have two parameters we need to meet. First is the what? Is the, oh, what did I do? First is the what? Is the on refresh, and the next one is the child. Okay, so for the on refresh, I want to use the child here. Okay, for the on refresh, we need to make sure we are actually setting an on refresh right, otherwise we're gonna have some errors. So for now, our on refresh is gonna be empty like this, so that it will not yield at us. But I'll make sure I'll add a sync here, okay, and then I end this here. Next is to look at, this should be a comma, our child. Our child, what we'll do here is to actually create our user interface, and we want to have our user interface in the middle of the page. So I use center as a base widget. And next is to have another child, and this child will have a very important widget for provider, which is consumer, call consumer. So consumer, yeah, and this consumer will always feed the data to our user interface. So very important. So what data are we gonna look at? We're gonna look at this data from this page. And what is the name of the class? It is video data. Perfect. So I paste it here, and this will have two round brackets, and inside we're gonna have builder. We can have builder child key, so we're gonna use the builder for this. And for our builder, let me see, consumer video data, and this is center. Okay, so that is good now. Consumer center. Consumer center. Okay, so for our builder, we need to have this. First one is context, and after the context, we need to have the value. Next is we need to have the child. Okay, and after this, we need to have a curly bracket here. Why is this yelling at us? Because we have not imported that file. So I import. Perfect. So for the builder, all we have to do is to have a simple logic in here to actually help us call the refresh, and also have some logic to actually control our page. So first, we're gonna call the values in the map. So the value dot in our map variable, which is for the getter side. So this is what we are calling now, this variable. And this variable holds the data which is coming, it is actually coming from our URL, and it's being decoded for our app. Okay, so dot map, then dot length. So length will count and then display whatever is inside the API for us. So we call dot length, and we said if this is equal to 0, which is empty, that's a condition, one condition. Second condition, if it's not, if the value is not giving any error, then we use the ternary operator. Then what should we do? Let me see. Then the circular indicator should show. So we call circular progress indicator. Exactly, this is what I need. And so we said if the value dot the map dot length is equal to 0 and the value is not an error, then continue to show the circular progress indicator until something happens. Good. So until something happens, then we'll use this value. Then if the value dot error, oh, what's this? Okay, then we need to show our our test widget displaying something here. So let me say this test, and inside our test we're gonna have first, let me open it wide. First we're gonna have there is an error, and this error we'll be calling an error message in here, and this error message we use the $, and then we have a code in here, and we call value first dot error message. need to make sure I end this well. Okay, perfect. So now we have a test, and if okay, so let's look here again. If the value dot length is equal to 0 and the value is not error, show the progress bar. So until it happens, but if the value dot error, then show. If the value dot this one actually returns an error, then show this there is an error, then the error message will display. Okay, or show something else, but let me first actually start this using the test align. So I'm gonna do test align for this, and then it should be in the center. No, not value, in the center. Okay, this error message. Okay, so if all this here is actually false, there's no error, then show the real data inside a list view. Okay, so we call a list view here. Oh, so list view dot builder, and here we're gonna have the item count, and also not only the item count, we also have the item builder, which is already here, but let me add the item count, and this item count can be the value of our data. So to call the item count, we can use value dot map data dot the length of the data. Perfect. And for the builder, what we have to do is to first have our contests, so parameter, and then we need to have our index so that it will check the index of our data coming from our API. So this is actually kind of a dictionary, or probably we call this the key and then the value. So if our value in here is coming, then we need to actually have the length of everything. So we have our first key, and then we have another nested keys, and then the values appended to it. Okay, so context and then index, and every key here is probably an index for this nested watch data. Okay, good. So context and then index. Then next, we need to now return a UI, and this UI will have all the keys from our API. So what we want to do is to apparently return a card here as our UI. Okay, so what am I supposed to do here? Let me terminate this. So what I'm going to do now is to create a card, and this card will actually house our UI here, and then we'll return it here. Okay, so let's look at how that is going to work. So we go down the scaffold, and then we create a class. So this class, or let me just call a stateless widget here, and this stateless widget will have a video card. So this is just calling a card widget, but we are building it in a widget and then calling it where we need it. So video card, and for our video card, we'll return a card here instead of a container because we are using the card widget. And we need to check the elevation of the card, which is only 10 for us. And next is to look at the pattern of the card, very important. What is happening today? Pattern. And the pattern, we're gonna have a chart inside a pattern, and then we'll have a pattern here, and we'll have edge insect around it. So edge insect around it should be 8.0. Okay, so after our pattern around it, we need to have a column. And for column, we're gonna have our children. So for our children here, first we're gonna call some values, and this value will be really important to call our network or call the data from our API. But first, let me leave this here, and then I'll look at our previous file. Well, so first, let's call this class, the one we have created here, which is the video card. So we have the video card here, and this video card needs to be good. Okay, so we have a video card here. Now, this one, video card, this one. Okay, good. Okay, so next, let's finish this first on the refresh before we move to the next one. For our refresh, which is the refresh indicator we added, we need to call the context.read so that it will actually, when we actually slide the page down or we pull it down, then it will refresh our page. So we need to first use the await here to load. Using await here will make the indicator load, the refresh indicator load, or show the loading until the content display. So we use that wait. Without that wait, it will just reload without waiting for the content. So we use context.read. Read because we want to reload the entire thing from our what? Our video data. And where do we get our video data? From our video underscore data page. And here we need to append a simple refresh to this. So this dot fetch data. So we are fetching the data. Fetch data. Okay, fetch data. Context.read video data dot fetch data. Okay, fetch this data. Okay, so let me relook at this. So we have on refresh. is, let me look the quick. Fetch data should be what? Should be a local variable. So we have video that we have a provider, we have the model, paintings. No. Okay, okay. So let me look at this side. This is correct. On refresh, sync, context.read. Okay. I mess up here. Good. All right. So that error has been solved. So let's look at the return card. So I'm going to look at actually adding data from our what? Our API. So what we're going to do here is to look at our keys here. We're going to actually call the heading, but we need to make sure this is the primary what? The primary key, and now we have the nested keys and the value. So we're going to call this, and then we'll call the appended nested keys. So we're going to use the heading, the subtitle, and the image. Yeah, probably later somewhere when we do more into APIs, we'll add the rest to it. So for this tutorial, let's make use of the first ones. Let's go. So this here, I would say for our video, first, we'll be needing the map, that is our getter, and then, no, we need to set this first, and the value dot the map, and after our map, we need to get the key that is YouTube, this one, because we want to get this and we want to get the nested ones. So we call YouTube here and YouTube here. Then we need to call the indexes of the nested ones. So I add index to this, and that index is simply the keys. So I call index. Perfect. Let me see. Context index, return video card, and the naming. What's this? Naming parameter. Oh, okay. I need to recheck here again. That is the card area. We need to make sure why this is yelling at us, because if you look at this, it's saying add parameter to what? Add name parameter. So, or the key. So here we need to add the map here. So I'll call this dot map. Okay, perfect. This dot map. Then super this dot map. Then inside here, I need to call a final map, and then the map will be a string and then the dynamic. So string dynamic. Okay, so string dynamic and then map. and I terminate this. Okay, perfect. So this should be okay here. Next is to look at finishing our card. So for the card, now we have the children. The children first, we need to actually have. Let me save this and then. Okay, let me finish this before we run. So I'm gonna add the image, and this image, where from this? This is just calling a network, which is a URL, and this is gonna be from our what? Our API or JSON, right? So what I'll do here is to call this key here, image. I want the image to show the heading and then the subtitle. That's what we'll be using. So this is what I'm calling here. First, I need to call our getter, that is the map here. And this map will have the key value we need. This image, like this. And so we should make sure they should be in a quote, not this side, here, this side, quote. And then we call the dollar sign, and then we have a curly bracket around this. And then we add our ending quote. Okay, next. So what I have done here is actually call the image in a network, and this is the image, and this image is a link on our JSON. So I call the key, and then it's gonna call this link here. Good. So this is exactly what I've done. So this is simply like a URL, and this URL is calling from this nested keys inside our JSON. So this dot map calls everything in here. Now we are being specific. Which one do we need? We need image. That is what I have called in here. So being specific, I call the map, which has all the data, and then I call a specific key, which is image here. Perfect. Next is to actually add a size box to give some space to our other what keys we are going to call. So I use the size box, this one, just for space. So the space, we need a height, and then the height of 10 is okay. Okay, so next what we're going to do is to call our heading. So this heading will be in a test. There's a test widget. So I have the test here, and let me have my data in here. So basically like this one, the one we have here, exactly the same, but what will change is actually the key we need to show in this test widget. And the key we need to show is the heading here. So I'll only copy this heading, and then we change it with the image. Oh, sorry. Let me type it out. Heading. And let me see what is causing the error. This needs to be single. Okay, so that is what the heading for us. Next, what we have to do is to add some styling to the heading. So comma, and then I'll add a style here. Style, and then I call the test style. Test style. And what we'll do is to simply increase the fonts. So let's save the font size. Font weight will also be needed, and then we'll add a font size. So font size, let's set the heading to 20, and then the font width, let's use probably font width, and this font weight should be set to .w800. Okay. Next is to give some space after our heading. We need to have a comma here, and then now we have our heading here, which we have called here. Now we need to have our subtitle. So subtitle should be beneath the heading. So I copy this with the size box because I want a space here. But I changed this to what? Subtitle. We have the heading, now we need a subtitle from the API. Okay. And what do we need next? Next is to check font size. Heading is 20, so we set this to be a bit smaller. And then probably the width, oh, the width we should set this to 400 instead of what, 800. Okay, perfect. So let me quickly run you through as I run this, but let me run this first. We see what is there, then I'll take you through once more, then we're gonna end the video. So let me start with run without debugging. Perfect. So it's gonna take some time and then everything will run fine. Sorry, my emulator is not really running, so I have actually activated the Flutter Web. And by activating the Flutter Web, is simply close your emulator and then let the project run. Then you select web as what as an emulator. So I'm running in the browser so that we can see what we actually did, and I'll also take you through once more before we end the tutorial. So this is what we actually did by calling the image and then also calling the heading and then the subheading. So if we step into our code here, we only called simply the change notifier provider, and then we call the class inside our video data, which is up here. And what we did was to add change notifier to our model, and this model also contains the URL calls, and this is basically variables having the map to call the data from our link here, and we check the errors here, and then this is what to be shown to the user. We added notify listener to actually pass it through our provider and be able to use in any page. And this was a function which I said I will add to have some button to auto reload here, but not really necessary for this tutorial. Maybe next tutorial will implement that. So this one is not used in this tutorial. Okay, and this is the getter for the project where it actually pass all the private variables here to the other pages like the UI. And in the way the UI, what we did is actually include the provider, and then we included the video data, which is the model, and then the service as well. And what we did was to actually call the scaffold, and we are actually also reading the data from our other file, which is this one, and then we're reading everything inside the video data. And here what we did was to call all the data on a refresh, which is this, right? So anytime we pull this down. Let me reload this. Okay, like in the app, if we're using the emulator, you really see this. Okay, so if we look at this side, we have this simple logic where we are checking to see if this one is not empty and also not there is no error, then the circular bar shows. If the value is dot error, then it's gonna print this if there's an error. Okay, so if there is no error and this check is true, and after loading for a while, then the data will then pull up on the screen, and we are calling the YouTube, and then we are calling the IDs in the nested YouTube index. Then here we have a simple card, and the card actually passes in the network image, which is here, and then we pass in the heading, which is also here, and then we pass in the subtitle, which is also here. So calling a URL or a JSON file using Flutter Provider. Peace, I'm out. This is the end. If you have any question, we'd like you to leave it down below, and we're gonna get back to you as soon as possible. Kindly subscribe to the channel and check out our old videos. Bye, see you.